Hello, everybody. Today we're going to talk about Room, a new library introduced by Google some months ago. It's part of the Android components, but today we'll only talk about this specific part. My name is Sergi Martinez. I'm an Android GDE. I also work at Chipset Spain. I don't know if you know the brand, or I don't care, frankly. How many of you have experience with Kotlin? Okay. So today you're going to learn some Kotlin. All the samples are in Kotlin. Shouldn't be a problem, okay? They're more or less easy to understand. I will remark the more strange things that you will find if you've never seen Kotlin. So first of all, what is Room? What it does and what's the purpose of Room? According to documentation, it's a library. I have to read it. I was unable to memorize this. A library to handle Android databases via an abstraction layer. What does it mean? Simply and quick, it's kind of an ORM. Okay. Those of you who work with Android databases, who work with Android databases before? The standard and things like content providers. Okay, who loves content providers? Okay. The idea is to make the access to the database faster, easier, because you know that we write a lot of boilerplate, a lot. So Room helps us to reduce this boilerplate. It has it works in a similar way to retrofit for those who use it, and you will see it saves a lot of time. This is the main idea of Room. We have an application that needs to access data, and it works with three kinds of objects. We have entities, we have data access objects, or DAOs, and we have the database, the Room database object itself. The entity is just an object that represents a row in a database. Okay, it's the typical object that you save into the database. The DAOs are an interface that it's used to access tables, queries, and perform operations in the database. And last, the database object is the responsible for holding everything together. You will specify to this object, okay, I have these entities and I have these DAOs. Just fill them with stuff and make them work. So let's start from the beginning. Let's talk about entities. But before anything else, nice color combination. Sorry. You need to include the Room. Let me explain a story aside. I've encouraged, every time I prepare a presentation, a new release is presented the next day. So I finished this presentation. As you can see, I'm including the beta 2. The next day, they release the RC1. So this slide is outdated. But if you go to documentation, you will see. So basically, we have to use the Google Maven repository. It's not in JCenter. And we need to use two libraries, the runtime library and the compiler library. For those of you who never use Kotlin, this KAPT thing, it's similar to it's the same than the APT, right? But it's only for Kotlin. What it does is that it helps the compilation process to have libraries that it needs during the compilation, but not in runtime, because Room generates a lot of code. Okay. As I said, this is the beta 2. They released the RC1. They added a new thing. It's not included in the slides, but I'll comment them. Okay. Okay, let's talk about entities. This is a simple entity. As you see, it's just an object with some annotations. For those of you who never used Kotlin, for simple objects, we can declare the things in the constructor. This is basically a class with a constructor. And data types go at the end instead of the beginning of the line. What we have here, first annotation, table name. I have everything marked in this horrid orange, but I think I cannot use it. This will use the table products, okay? You have to keep in mind that when we start Room, it will create everything. So I will explain you later how to do it, but this will create the table products with these fields. Okay? There is the possibility to use an already existing database. Okay? But the expected behavior is this, to create everything. So here we are not only declaring the product entity, we are declaring the table entity. Is this clear? What else do we have? We have the primary key, which is we have a single annotation for the primary key. And then for each field, we have the column info with the name of the field. If the name of the field is the same than the name of the variable, in the case, for example, of name, you don't have to write the name. But my advice is always put the name in the annotation for several reasons, because maybe you refactor later on and you don't remember. And if you use code obfuscation, okay, once it's compiled, this field name won't be name, will be something else. So it's always a good idea to write the name of the field in the column info annotation. Okay, this is a simple object. Let's see some other options that we have when we create an entity. Can you read the text in the orange line? Yeah? No? Bugger. Okay. Oh, thank you. Okay, expect not to kill myself. There are too many things here. Okay, what we have here. We have another field in the entity annotation to specify indices. Okay. Basically, the indices field expects an array of index objects, and index objects expects an array of strings with the fields. This is the Kotlin magic, but provider ID and product ID, this is an array. Okay. And we can specify if the index is unique or not. I'm assuming all these database concepts are clear. If somebody has any question on database stuff, just raise your hand or switch on a light because I cannot see you guys. Okay. More things. We can make composite primary keys. In the previous example, for example, we had only a single field for the primary key. So we mark the field as primary key. But in some cases, the primary key could be the sum of two fields. So we need to specify the primary key as an array of fields as a notation in the entity annotation. Okay? Foreign keys. Be careful with this. When we say foreign keys, what we are doing is just enforcing the relationship. We are not retrieving data from relationships. We'll talk about this later, but this is the idea. So in the entity, we have this inventory table. It just has a provider ID, product ID, quantity. The examples are simple to read. Maybe they are not the best database design, but don't mind about this. It's just to make them readable. And we decide that we have one foreign key, okay? Again, it's an array of foreign keys, so we have more than one. We say, okay, the entity that we are, the foreign entity, it's product entity.class in Java. In Kotlin is : as you see, we don't say the name of another table. We say the name of another entity. Then the parent columns and the child columns. In this case, the parent column is ID in the other table, and the child column is product ID in this table. Okay, if we try to save an inventory entity and the product ID doesn't exist, in the products table, adding these foreign keys will make the saving to fail. Okay. So this is just to enforce relationships.
Are those names of columns?
Columns. Yeah. As a guide, if you see an underscore, it's always the name of the column because I put them with. Normally, when it's also between quotes, it refers to a column. If it's the only references that you have to fields in the class or to, let's say, Java objects are the entities. As far as I remember, there is nothing making direct reference to a field. Okay, just table column names. Okay. all these orange that you cannot see. Nested objects. We have the ability to create nested objects, but again, this doesn't mean that, oh, I can have my list of providers, and each provider contains the list of products. That's not the meaning of nested object. Nested object says, just imagine we have a query that returns these 5 fields: ID, name, description, color, and size. But we don't want to put all these fields in a single object. For our business model, or we want something a bit more complex. So what we have is a product entity class and a product info class. The product info class has just 2 columns, color and size. Same than in the table. But in the product entity, we say that we have an embedded object that it's of type product info, the one in the bottom. So when it retrieves the fields, or when we save the object, what it will do is just take the 3 first fields, put them on the product entity object, and these 2 fields, they put them in the info object of type product info. Okay? This is just if we want to not having the typical object with 200 fields, but we want it a bit more sorted. Okay. Sorry. That's all about entities. They're not complex, it's just a bunch of annotations. DAOs, data access objects. The data access object is an interface where we establish all the operations that we want to do. This is a simple case. We have a products data access object. Okay, it should be an interface with the DAO annotation, end of it. And we have, for example, an insert operation. In this case, we annotate with insert. We can specify the action to perform on case of conflict. I think the default is cancel, but we can say, oh, if there is a conflict, replace, or delete, whatever. And what we are saying is, for those that never seen Kotlin before, this is just a function. All the functions in Kotlin are fun. Function insert returns a long. It has a single parameter of type product entity. So this operation will perform an insert and of the provided product entity, and will return a long field with the ID of the row. Not the primary key, the ID of the row. Different. It's basically useless. The returning type is optional. If you're not going to use it, just void, end of it. Okay? This is a simple insert. A query. Similar. I mean, we create a function called getAll that will return a list of products. And then in the query annotation, we specify the query to execute. Select everything from products. Okay? Update. Same thing. We will provide an object, and it will look for the same object in the database with the same primary key and replace this object. And it will return the number of modified rows. And delete, exactly the same. We provide an object, it will delete it, and it will tell to us how many rows have been deleted. Okay, these are simple examples. Let's go for more advanced examples. Insert, we have a lot of options. First one, as you can see, I have replace, rollback, abort. I put just some of the options that you have. First one, it will insert a single product, okay, and return the row ID. Second one, it allows us to, in Kotlin, var is the same that the 3 dots in Java. So it allows us to put several products separated by comma, and it will return a list of the row IDs. Another one, insert two products, and it will insert these 2 products. A weirder one, a single product and a list of products. So what I want you to see is that we have a lot of combinations. We can do list, we can do a single object, we can do 3 objects, whatever. Okay? Room is smart enough to understand what you want to do with it. Okay? Update, exactly the same. We can say one, we can use var, we can use a list, we can use single one and a list, blah, 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 blah. Delete, exactly the same. We can use several. Keep in mind that for delete, it will only read the primary key. So if you have a product and you say delete this product, and your product object has one name and the one in the database has another name, Room will not check these fields. It will only look for the object with this primary key and delete it. Okay? Queries. We have thousands of things with queries that we can do. For example, first one, it's a simple, a normal query. Office market, yeah. The second one, it's the same, but it can return an array instead of a list. It's up to you. The third one, it's using a parameter. We have a function called getProductsWithName that receives a parameter called name. And in the query, I can specify parameters just putting a colon in front of the name of the parameter. Next one, well, just to show you that we can use the same parameter more than once. In this case, I call it search product. So it's looking for the word name in the name and in the description. We can also provide a list of strings and use it in the in operator. So if the list contains three strings, the in will just expand them and separate by commas. Okay. And this case is just two integer saying, okay, quantity should be greater or equal to minimum quantity, and quantity should be minor or equal to max quantity. Okay, are these examples clear? Any question? Are you there? Okay, more examples of query. This one is, okay, as we are matching by ID, and ID is our primary key, and the solution could be only one product, instead of returning a list, we're returning a product entity. Okay? It's up to you if you say to Room, return a list or return a single item. But if you say, I want a single item as answer, and it produces a list, it will fail. So you have to be more or less coherent with what the query does and what result are you asking for. Another one example. You make a count, so it will return an integer, a single number. Another example. In this case, a lot of times you make queries that doesn't return all the fields of the entity or return different fields. In this case, what we are doing is saying, okay, let's imagine that I have products with the same name. I want to know how many products of each name I have in my table. So select count of all rows as count, and name from products group by name. This returns only two columns, count and name. So we can create an entity, that it's not really an entity, it's just a temporary holder, specifying only the column infos. We don't need to specify the table. Because if we specify the table, it will create the table. Okay? So we say, there is the name, there is the count, so our query will return the list of product count entity. Okay? Okay, this is about the DAO. Let's talk about the database object. That's the simple one. We just say, okay, we have a my database object. It's of type room database. We need to annotate it saying, okay, we are going to use these entities, and the version is number 1. Remember in SQLite that you have to specify the version of the database. It's the same thing, and it's using these DAOs. It should be just abstract, so it will extend this class and fill the gaps. And now, once we define the database, we only need to generate it. It's very simple. Room.databaseBuilder, the context, preferably the application one. The class of the database to use. It's my database.class is the one I defined in the previous slide. And the name of the database as a file. But how will be the name of the file? .build. And this will generate the database object. And now we can do database products.get all as list. And this will automatically return a list of product entities. Okay? As you may see, using database it's very simple. This is important. Do not create more than one database object. See? I mean, here with the database builder, we built one. Do not make other copies. I mean, if you have 2 databases, create 2 objects, but only one per database. It's important to be a singleton. Otherwise, performance could really degrade a lot. I think that here dependency injection is your friend. Whatever mechanism you have to make singletons. Okay. So single instance. Let's talk about type converters. I guess that more or less everybody has worked with the date class, right? Yes? No? Say yes. Okay. It sucks. I prefer to use the 310 ABP. I don't know if you're familiar with it. In Java 8, Java, every version has released a new system to work with dates. We have date, we had calendars, and now we have the local datetime, all this framework. Unfortunately, it's not available in Android. It's not available in Java 7. I think that in version 26, it's available. I think. But Min SDK should be 26, so I think we will be using in 5 years. There is a library called 310BP, BP from backport, that allows us to use these time date classes in Java 7. And ABP is a library that it's just a wrapper of BP, but it changes the way that some information is loaded, that it's better for Android. Of course, it's from Jake Wharton. So, as I said, in my project, I don't use date. I use local datetime. What happens if I try to save local datetime into database? Android is not able to do this conversion. So we can create a type converter that will automatically perform these conversions. In this case, I have a type converter that goes receive a local datetime and returns a string, and another one below that receive a local datetime. Sorry, it receives a timestamp in a string and returns a local datetime. So both ways of the equation. Okay. I'm using the date example, but this could be any kind of data from one side to the other. Now, if we want to use these type converters in the database class, we can annotate with type converters, datetime converter class. End of it. And it will automatically, every time it finds a date field or a local datetime, do the transformation automatically. But sometimes we can create type converters that we don't want to use them in the whole database. So we can specify at which level we want to use them. We can use them at database level. We can use them at DAO level. We can use them at only in a single function of a DAO. We can use them only in a parameter of a single function of a DAO. We can ever specify it in an entity or in an entity field. Okay, so you decide the granularity of the type converters. You could ask, oh, what happened if they collide because it's very complex? I don't know. I didn't do it. I tried to make things simple. Try it and write a post. But I guess that the lower level always wins. Okay, another important thing, migrations. You know that in SQL database, when you have a new version of the database, you have to perform some code, blah, blah, blah. In this case, it's quite similar, but it's very easy. We declare 2 objects of type migration. Migration from 1 to 2, migration from 1 to 2, migration from 2 to 3. We specify in the constructor, okay, this migration works from version 1 to version 2. This migration works from version 2 to version 3. Okay? And it just is a single method called migrate that receives the database, and we execute the SQL lines that we want to execute. And when we instantiate the room database, we add migrations. See, the dot add migrations, and put all the objects. So if we have a user that is using version 1 and downloads a version that uses version 3, it will automatically execute the migration from 1 to 2 and the migration from 2 to 3. See, this will be, for example, specifying that the database is version 3, so it will perform all the migrations automatically. Be careful. If you specify a version and there is no migration for that version, it will create the whole database again based on the scheme. Okay? So be very careful with this. Even if you say, OK, I have my migration from 1 to 2, and from 3 to 4, when it goes from 2 to 3, it creates the database again. So be very careful with this. I didn't want to include it in the presentation because it was a long topic, but Room provides a specific class for testing this. Okay? When we build the database, we can specify, sorry, when we create the database object, in our Gradle, we can specify a path for the scheme. So when the application runs, it will create JSON files with the scheme of the database, and then we can use these schemes to test if the migrations work OK. Check documentation. It's very deep topic, but it will help a lot. OK. Other things that we can use, live data. Is anybody using live data here? No? Well, okay. For those who are not using, live data, it's part of the Android libraries. It's basically giving us streams with data. So what we will do is we receive this live data and we consume it in the UI. Another option, we can use RxJava. We simply need to add another library called Room RxJava 2. It should be second version of RxJava. And then we can make the DAO return flowables, singles, or maybes. Okay. Is anybody working with RxJava? Okay, worth it to explain. In the case of flowable, if there is no information, nothing will happen. If there is data, it will we will receive the data on next. Is that minutes? Ah. And the good thing about flowable is that if somebody updates the table, the flowable will emit the information again. So it's a live subscription. You subscribe to the flowable, and you automatically receive all the updates on the information. In the case of the maybe and single, they work more or less similar. They receive a single value. The difference is that if there is no data, maybe we'll just invoke onComplete, and single will throw an error. Okay, it's basically the difference between them. There are more things, a lot more things, but it's enough for today. I will only explain one thing that they added this week to the library. It's the ability to make transactions. In the DAO, you can create a standard function annotated with transaction, and it can invoke other functions of the DAO, and all them will run in a transaction. So if any of them fails, the transaction will be rolled back. This is very important, especially if you, for example, use a flowable that is receiving all the updates, and you perform an operation that deletes and inserts again. Or, for example, if you update, because physically it deletes and updates. So if you use a flowable, maybe you see your list of elements flickering. If you execute all them in a transaction, flowable won't emit if it's not at the end of the transaction. Okay? Any question? Anything you want to know?
How do you deal with dynamic queries? Queries built from different criteria, for example. Filters depending on user's action. Do you have to, because all the examples were static SQL.
Basically, you can set any string here, so you can build your string. The problem is the fields that you receive. Okay, if you are not able to determine the fields that you are going to receive, it's probably there is no solution for that. Okay, but if the query is dynamic, you can build this query on a string, and then use the script.
If a user doesn't state the date has to be null. Okay, so where date is null.
In
not
in the case of Kotlin, you can use macros to avoid adding all the stuff. In the case of Java, you can use ternary and make a smarter string that says, okay, if this is null. I mean, room doesn't help you at all to create the query, at all. Also, in Kotlin, you have default values. So you can say, okay, date is not mandatory, and if it's not provided, it will have this value.
Okay.
Probably doesn't make sense for date, but for other things, it makes sense. But if you have to build a different, a bunch of wheres and things and stuff, it's better to do it as a constant outside and then put it here, okay? Or use macros.
At the beginning, you ask us who is using content provider.
Yes.
And I believe not everybody is using that because it could be a bit complicated at the beginning.
It's nothing. I don't hate content provider. I use them.
Yes.
It's just that you have to write too many boilerplate.
Yes.
And if you don't do a good structure, the content provider, it's a good candidate for a code class because everything is there.
Yes.
You need to be able to
Correct.
separate.
And my question is there the new alternative to content provider, and should I convert my project, which is using content provider, connected with load manager, which give me actually it keeps up to date my data.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned about live data, and does the live data can work with load managers, or should I?
I haven't worked with live data. Disclaimer. I know it can work, but right now I'm more working with Rx than with live data. Okay. I can talk by Rx. In the case of Rx, you will receive updates if it's a flowable. Okay. I mean, I used it in beta, and it's not working all the time. But the theory says that you will receive. I mean, this is still in beta. It's not still 100% stable. Haven't found any kind of big deal. It's just that sometimes you perform operations that for some reason it doesn't detect the change. Okay, I don't know how it works internally. So probably it's something that they are improving. You have also the possibility to use this with content providers as the way that things happen internally in the content provider. But this is more into a new architecture that it's not using content providers. I mean, content provider is an option. You can use it or you can not use it. I mean, in my case, I haven't used it for years. I use it for a long time, but then we move into more clean architecture that we don't need the content providers. Okay, it's up to you. But I think it's probably you will be able to use both things. Also, you have to...
At the same time? Do you mean at the same time?
Yeah,
provider?
I mean using room inside of the content provider to do all the queries.
Okay, can I ask you one question? Or, yeah, you said we can work with the room and the content provider at the same time, but content provider gives us ready methods to use, like update or insert.
I think I read in the documentation that room has also the ability to return cursors. So you have cursors, you can do something there. I mean, I think you can use both things together, but this just came out of my mind right now. Okay, it's something to be checked. If the question is, oh, all my application is using content providers, should I move from content providers to room? It's up to you. I mean, will it save you time in the future? It will be a lot of work. If you're, for example, using loaders, in the UI, I will say, no, don't touch it. It's up to you, your project. I mean, this is something very new. It's also intended to work with the new components, live data, life cycle, all this stuff. Okay? It's no yes or no answer.
Okay, thank you much.
Anything else?
Is Room able to start itself? Is there a way to integrate an already existing database file with Room so I can already...
Yes. Yes. You have to create a migration from 0 to 1, for example, and then say, I'm using 1. If you play around with migrations, it's possible. Okay.
And then my second question is, can I better model potential errors when I do an update, for example. Let's say I update something and then there's a conflict. I know that we can pass this on annotations, but is there another way than just giving back me like an integer so I can just evaluate if there is like zero, no rows?
No, I mean, it will give you an exception. If it fails, it will give you a proper exception.
All right, thank you.
Well, an exception if you're using normal room, and an error in flowable, all the stuff.
Okay, I have a question. If we have a query that returns two elements, and we subscribe to that query using flowable, and we update one of the elements, is my understanding right that we
yeah, that's the theory.
Emit two.
No. The theory says that if you are still subscribed to the flowable, you will receive the update. My experience is it doesn't work 100% of times.
Yes, but
it's a beta.
Yeah, but the update actually does delete and insert.
Yeah, you receive it twice. Yeah,
that's my question.
Yeah, that's why they add transactions.
Two items.
The ability to create transactions. So you can create a new method that invokes the delete and the update in a transaction, or you can annotate the update as transaction. And then it will only receive the flow at the end of the operation.
Okay.
But this is very new. It's new from this week. I just read it in the update. But what they explain is that this is the idea.
Okay.
Okay.
Cool. Thanks.
Do you have any idea when can we expect the stable version?
They released the RC1 this week, so probably I think they say that it's the last version with changes, but it's Google. So probably there will be a RC2 and probably a final version. I don't know, this next month or the other. My guess, I don't know.
So hi, so when I'm using Room in my application, I do have problem with many-to-many relationship between entities. So basically, what best when I'm trying to do, so I can query, let's say, product, and then list of IDs related, let's say products have categories, multiple categories, and then I can at best query product and list of IDs that are related to this product. So, and then I'm ending up with many queries between for loop, for querying
I cannot say that I've tried, because in mobile, personally, I always follow two rules. Never do many-to-many. And I try to avoid relations. For me, the database is not a database. The database is in the backend, and this is only for catching things. I know. So I haven't tried the many-to-many. I made a couple of tests with the one-to-many, and it worked more or less fine. I assume that depending on the relationships, you have to be very careful in the order of insertion to be right. But in the case of many-to-many, I haven't tried it.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, in your example, for query, you pass just simple object like integer or something.
Yeah.
Is it possible to pass more sophisticated object like, for example, my criteria? For example,
you have to create a type converter. But
for this parameter, yeah,
one field, one parameter, one field.
So it's impossible to directly use it in this workflows.
The what?
To use it directly in the workflows. I need all the time to make converter.
So you, for example, want to provide a customer object, right? No.
Okay, thanks.
It's only with embedded ones. I mean, Google, in the documentation, they say that the ability to use sub-objects or sub-tables, it's not developed on purpose. Because, what's the word? Basically, the phone won't sustain it. I mean, if this is like Hibernate, but really small, and so they don't want to allow this kind of operations to avoid cluttering in the phone. And they explain it that they did it in purpose.
Okay, thanks.